I say there is the mastermind. And below the mastermind is the number 2 man. And this mastermind, apparently, you can see him doing things without those persons who would do the dirty work knowing and seeing him. The bank account was given by that June Villamor to these 3 lords. So, nang naibigay na, kulang pa rin. 100 lang naibigay, 200 ang usapan. So on the next day, September 16, hinulog ulit ang 100,000. So that completes. So then the work started. Initially, kasama ko naman si Mr. Roy Mabasa and we were briefed by the Secretary of Justice. Actually, our impression, we congratulated actually the Secretary of Justice because not once in our history na ganito katindi ang pagsisigasig. Ibig sabihin, to my impression is satisfied kami lahat.
From the nation's capital, all sides, all the time, I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. The big story tonight.
The pieces of the puzzle that is the Percy Mabasa slay case are starting to come together.
After revealing to the family the identity of the potential mastermind, authorities have now secured yet another person of interest in the case. Marlene Alcaide with the big story.
From the Iwahig Prison and Penal Farm in Puerto Princesa, Palawan, one inmate was flown directly to Metro Manila. The inmate was still wearing a bulletproof vest and helmet when he was taken to the NBI detention facility on Wednesday night. He is a new person of interest on the assassination of broadcaster Percy Lapid. Justice Secretary Boying Remulla has yet to comment on why the inmate from Palawan was involved in the killing of Lapid. But according to Lapid's brother, Roy Mabasa, the new person of interest could give some more clarifications about the case.
Meron silang mga loose ends na na ipinagduduktong-duktong. Maring isa yan doon sa mga loose ends na yun. Alam mo naman, meron pa rin tatlo na nasa labas pa na hindi pa rin tatakip ng pulis. So ito yung mga loose ends. I don't want to preempt what the DOJ will be saying tomorrow or on Saturday.
According to Attorney Berteni Causing, spokesperson of the Mabasa family, the Lapid murder case is slowly but surely becoming clearer and clearer. Recall that the Mabasa camp said that the Justice Department has already named the mastermind behind the killing. Speaking on the big story, Causing said that the individual is from the Bureau of Corrections. It is still unclear, however, what his designation is with the Bureau.
To be clear, that person is within the BuCor. Although what is not clear is whether that person is actually working for one of the stalls or businesses inside the BuCor or whether that person is an employee of BuCor.
The motive for killing Lapid is still unclear, but according to an inmate, a video of Lapid was sent to him where the slain broadcaster was questioning how the BuCor was being handled. In addition to this, the so-called Cinderella Man of the DOJ has also been floated during the broadcaster's online commentary show last September 5.
Alam niyo ba na merong opisyal sa Department of Justice na tinaguriang ang lalaking Cinderella ngayon ay nakatira na sa isang pangunahing subdivision sa lalawigan ng Laguna. Mahal na subdivision yan. Dati walang-wala yan sa buhay. Kaya paano niya ngayon ipaliliwanag ang kanyang biglang pagyaman? Dapat ito isalang ito sa lifestyle check.
Attorney Causing also pointed out that the order to kill Lapid was released during the same day when the episode about DOJ's so-called Cinderella Man was aired. Come Saturday, the Mabasa camp is set to file a complaint against the alleged mastermind named by the DOJ. For News 5, Marlene Alcaide, we are One News.
The legal counsel of the Mabasa family recently shared in detail to 1PH's Sa Totoo Lang how the mastermind in the Percy Lapid slay allegedly worked with 3 gangs inside the Bilibid to kill the broadcaster as well as middleman June Villamor. Here's what we know so far. Now, speaking on 1PH's Sa Totoo Lang, Attorney Berteni Causing said the mastermind of the killing was outside of the new Bilibid prison, but had a trusted official or a quote number 2 who transacted with 3 gangs. It is still unsure if the number 2 is an employee of BuCor or works in one of the so-called businesses in BuCor. The gangs involved were the Happy-Go-Lucky Gang, Siga Siga Sputnik, and Batang City Jail. Now, the so-called Lord Number 1 held a meeting with 2 other gangs to discuss the hit order. They then pulled in money to hire a gunman from outside, which was arranged by the middleman June Villamor, who was a member of the Sputnik gang. They initially gathered 200,000 pesos from their small businesses inside Bilibid. Now, Villamor then contacted a certain Christopher Bacuto, a BJMP inmate who connected the middleman to the gunman Joel Escorial. Escorial was paid the 200,000 in pesos in tranches, but after finding out that the target was a broadcaster, Escorial asked for an additional 350,000 pesos. By October 3, Percy Lapid was killed while he was driving on his way home to BF Resort Village. The lords of the gangs were said to be happy about this development as they expected a reward from the killing. Kosing narrated, quote, "It was freedom being sold at that time. All of them wanted that liberty," end of quote. But come October 18, Escorial was presented to the public after he surrendered to the authorities. Because of this, the mastermind's trusted aide told the gang lords to ensure the case would not be traced to them. Villamor was then separated from the other inmates. Fearing for his life, the middleman sent a text message to his sister containing the names of those who could be responsible for his death. Shortly after that, it was said that 5 inmates supposedly killed Villamor by suffocating him by using a plastic bag. Overall, Kosing says the family is satisfied with the Justice Department's findings so far.
Actually, our impression, we congratulated actually the Secretary of Justice because not once in our history na ganito katindi ang pagsisigasig. Sana ang sunod na patayin mangyari, ganun din katindi para wala nang patayin na media man, wala nang pataying abogado, wala nang pataying judge, wala nang patayin kung at sino pa man negosyante. So, yan ang nangyari. So, ibig sabihin, to my impression is satisfied kami lahat.
New Bureau of Corrections Officer in charge Gregorio Catapang Jr. is leaving no stone left unturned in his quest to free the Bureau and the new Bilibid prison of corruption. Camille Samonte with the report.
A truckload of beer in cans and other contraband have been discovered at the new Bilibid prison. The Bureau of Corrections Officer in charge Gregorio Catapang Jr. believes that some BuCor and BJMP personnel are behind this. Catapang assures that he will investigate the sacked BJMP and BuCor personnel that were formerly in charge of supplying the NBP canteen.
Babaguhin natin yung sistema kasi part yun ng reforms at saka doon na isisingit yung mga epektos eh.
The new BuCor OIC will also probe Bureau officials and the staff of suspended BuCor Chief Gerald Bantag, who supposedly earned from the inflow of contrabands at Bilibid. He will likewise be checking if any of the inmate suppliers are related to Bantag.
Kasi hindi ka naman pwede mag-operate dito na wala kang supply agreement or whatever.
The Justice Department recommended that the BuCor manage the food supply of Bilibid inmates, but Catapang admits this could pose a challenge.
That will take a lot of manpower na naman. Kulang na nga kami sa tao, ba't pa kami ahawak ng pagpapakain ng preso?
But for now, Catapang plans to tighten the security of incoming food supply at the NBP while the investigation is ongoing. Catapang will also investigate other matters such as the appointment of unqualified BJMP personnel to high BuCor posts. He will also look into BuCor officials with pending cases that have been reinstated to their former positions and PDLs who have suddenly died supposedly due to COVID-19. For News 5, Camille Samonte, We Are One News.
Now here to share the latest on the internal cleansing within the Bureau of Corrections, we have with us BuCor Officer in Charge Gregorio Catapang Jr. Good evening, Sir Catapang, and welcome to the big story. First things first, this whole scenario puts into question, the latest developments at least, puts into question the whole gang system inside the Bilibid. Well, we do recognize, like what you mentioned in previous press conferences, that there's a need for gangs inside the Bilibid to at least provide some sense of organization considering the magnitude and the number of inmates that you have. But at the same time, if these killings actually happen, how are you going to balance that? How are you planning to at least look into this system in order to prevent gangs from being used to carry out such activities?
Yes, good evening. First things first, I'd like to say that I want to change their names from gangs to more friendlier atmosphere. Kasi pag sinabi mong gangs, they will be all gangsters inside the prison. So you have to change the name. Maybe a barangay or pangkat will be a better name. And then secondly, now that everything has been exposed, I will now have a chance to really be strict in all the procedures in allowing persons or people to come and go or visit the new Bilibid prison.
Hey, sir, in the recent cleanup that you did, Oplan Galugad, you mentioned that some personnel of the BuCor or the BJMP may have been involved in getting these contraband inside the prison. How are you going to do the cleanup when it comes to the BuCor itself, the BJMP? And what have you uncovered about how these things, the beer, the drugs, laptop, get inside the new Bilibid prison?
Yeah, of course, they don't get inside without the connivance of the guards. You just imagine a truckload of beer being able to enter the prison. So I think there's a connivance. So I have to deal with these people. Now, if they don't change, they will get the axe.
But that's exactly the point na rin, no? Like what you mentioned. I mean, there's connivance happening here, and beyond semantics of changing the names of these or how these gangs are called, probably calling them barangay. Beyond that, ano yung pwede nating gawin to ensure that we actually prevent this from happening in the future? What processes are you going to put in place? At the same time, if you're going to look into these processes, how do we make sure at least as well na strengthen yung intel natin that there's also no connivance that's going to happen as you try to look into what's happening inside the Bilibid?
Well, of course, first of all, you don't need to implement new laws or regulation. Ang problema, the people implementing it. No? So you will have to guard the guardians, so-called. No? So pati yung guardia, isi-CCTV mo na, hindi lang guardia o hindi lang yung mga binabantayan mo. No? So you will have to really check them out. No? And then of course, talk to them na I will have a one-strike policy. Pag ayaw nyo magtrabaho, mag-resign na lang kayo, umalis na kayo sa serbisyo. Kasi this is not the job for people who will not be responsive and responsible in doing their job.
Okay, medyo patong-patong na po yung problema natin. Pagpasok nyo pa lang. Ano po ba yung pinakamalaking hamon para sa inyo bilang BuCor OIC? And ano pong masasabi po ninyo dun sa mga blind items that Percy Lapid was dropping in his radio newscast about corruption and illegal activities happening even with the top officials of BuCor?
Yeah, of course, we should admit that there's, hindi ko naman mapuprove na there is corruption kasi up to now, I don't have the evidence. But there are so many lapses in the security implementation. Yung sa implementation side and then maybe there's no proper protocol. Parang naging familiar na lang sila pagpasok labas ng mga sasakyan and wala nang inspection. Actually, talagang may failure in inspecting the things that are coming in and going out. In fact, pag tinanong mo, meron ba tayong listahan dyan ng mga sasakyan na allowed talaga mag-enter? Wala. May mga decal ba yan? Kilala ba natin yung driver? Kaninong sasakyan ba yan? So these are things that we have to look into and we should implement.
Definitely, before we start on the reforms, we have to figure out and ask questions first on the kind of systems we have inside our jails. Maraming salamat po, BuCor OIC Gregorio Catapang Jr. Right after the break, seafarers are fearing job losses amid the country's supposed non-compliance with international maritime standards. We'll discuss the issue with Marina's Sonia Malaluan. That and more when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
Not all employees in this recruitment agency in Mandaluyong are wearing face masks. The management decided that optional mask use works better for them.
Pabor para sa amin in terms of operations and how we do things in the office. Because with the face mask, it's very hard to speak fluently or comfortably and even to hear each other.
But the management insists that they remain just as strict in implementing other health protocols. For one, employees with COVID-19 symptoms will be required not to report to work. A company nurse is also on duty to conduct free antigen testing and check on the health situation in the office. A health declaration form is also required to be filled out. Temperature checks are also standard practice. While employees have the option not to use face masks inside the office, they are required to do so when dealing with applicants in person.
It's among us only here in the office that's okay because it's like a bubble. If you have care for your colleagues, for the company, you have concern, please wear your face mask if you're outside.
The Labor Department has already issued guidelines on the voluntary use of face masks in workplaces. This covers all workers from the private sector except in healthcare.
You're watching The Big Story here on One News. Thousands of high-earning Filipino seafarers in Europe are said to be at risk of losing their jobs on the back of poor quality training in the maritime industry. Gerard de la Peña with the report.
It took Juldran 5 months to land an entry-level post in a foreign shipping company. He also shelled out more than 100,000 pesos to attend trainings and expedite requirements.
Yung mga international ngayon, sir, pahirapan po talaga. Ang una, age limit, sir. Tapos, yung mga training din po, sir, ang mamahal na. Meron din naman pong mga training na hindi naman po kailangan sa ibang sa kumpanya, pinapakuha po ng Marina, kaya ngayon magastos po.
But based on a 2020 audit conducted by the European Maritime Safety Agency, or EMSA, the Philippines fell short of the standard set by the European Commission. Included in the grievances brought up was the quality of training that Filipino seafarers get.
Merong mga issue about hindi nagagamit yung mga tamang equipment, no? Hindi nagkakaroon ng tamang onboard training, no? And hindi na monitor yung mga training programs, no? ng various schools.
If the EMSA decides to reject the licenses of Filipino seafarers, it would be much more difficult to secure jobs, even for old-timers like Alberto, who has been a seafarer for more than 20 years.
Mas kawawa kami mga seaman. Natural, mawawala kami ng trabaho. Maaaring may trabaho pero hindi na yung kagaya ngayon na maraming sakay.
But the Transportation Department and the Maritime Industry Authority, or Marina, clarified that the Philippines did not fail the audit. Authorities said they have already submitted proof of compliance over the grievances that EMSA mentioned.
Hindi po namin talaga malaman kung saan po nanggagaling yung mga balita na mayroon ng desisyon at negative na ang finding sa atin. Totoo po, in-explain ko madami pong deficiencies pero madami na din po tayong mga reformang ginawa at hindi pa po tayo nababa ng European Commission.
There is an estimated 600,000 Filipino seafarers worldwide, 50,000 of which are based in Europe. Sea-based OFWs are also responsible for bringing home $4.3 billion from January to August. Authorities said that they continue to adhere to global standards to ensure that Filipino seafarers remain employable.
Kami po dito sa Marina, sinasaayos po namin ang lahat para po may compliance tayo.
EMSA's decision, based on the compliance submitted by the Philippine government, is expected to come out sometime in June next year. For News 5, Gerard de la Peña, We Are One News.
Here to discuss with us the current state of maritime training for Filipino seafarers is Marina Deputy Administrator for Planning, Ms. Sonia Malaluan. Good evening, Ms. Malaluan. Welcome to The Big Story.
Good evening, Gretchen, and good evening, Chess.
Hey, Ms. Sonia, in the recent EMSA report, we were said to have fell short. Can you tell us more about this EMSA report and what categories or what exactly are Filipino seafarers lacking in?
Well, as mentioned earlier, the last inspection or assessment conducted by EMSA was in February 2020. And in fact, there are 23 deficiencies noted by EMSA that covers 6 key areas. So we have the program and course design or review and approval of yung ating mga maritime courses, no? Bachelor of Science in Maritime Transportation and the Bachelor of Science in Marine Engineering. There are problems in the examination and assessment of competencies, monitoring and evaluation of training assessment. We have also issues in training facilities and as well as yung tinatawag nating required onboard training. So yan po yung kabuuan ng mga deficiencies noted in the 2020 EMSA inspection.
Okay. Ma'am, quite a number of deficiencies there, 20 plus February 2020, you're given 2 years. How confident are you that those issues have been addressed?
Well, we have submitted our compliance or corrective actions. And the submission in March includes even documents or objective evidences of compliance. As we all know, kung meron tayong mga regulation, standards, and other requirements, then another issue is the implementation. So we have to show proof that we are indeed implementing these corrective actions. So nasubmit po natin yan, napakaraming mga dokumento in March, kasama po ang mga evidences of the implementation of corrective action.
All right. Definitely, I'm sure this discussion is going to extend and we hope to have you again in some future time to discuss this further again. Joining us for tonight, Ma'am Sonia Malaluan, Deputy Administrator for Planning over at Marina.
Thank you.
Now let's pause for a short break. Keep it here on One News.
Keeping the tradition alive since the 1960s, the 1.9-kilometer stretch of Ayala Avenue has transformed into its Christmas strip that gives delight to those stuck in traffic. But aside from diverting your attention, the lights in Ayala Avenue signals that Christmas has just arrived in the Makati Makati CBD or Makati Central Business District. Keeping the Pinoy tradition and heritage alive, giant paroles, kapi shells, and stores adorn the stretch of Paseo, Makati Avenue, and Ayala Avenue, or the major thoroughfares of the CBD.
Okay, we've been deprived of celebrating Christmas as one community. So this is our way of bringing it back in a brighter and bigger way. So aside from the lighting ceremony, we have more events in store for you in the coming weeks.
In Ayala Land's advocacy for sustainability, the giant paroles from last year's decorations remain to be the main element. The parol, after all, is the best way to symbolize the Filipino Christmas and is also a symbol of hope. A gigantic parol installation by the courtyard of Ayala Triangle Gardens was also added to make it easier for those who would like to have their photo taken close to the decorations.
After ng mahabang day sa trabaho, konting relax naman. Malaking bagay siya kasi bukod sa spirit ng Christmas, relaxing yung atmosphere dito.
Siya nakaka-overwhelm kasi hindi ka natatawid sa Ayala. Dito ka na lang magpapapicture, di ba? Safe ka pa.
The lights and sounds display in the Ayala Triangle Gardens is also something to look forward to next week. For News 5, Laila Pangilinan, we are One News.
The button at 1 in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Keeping the tradition alive since the 1960s, the 1.9-kilometer stretch of Ayala Avenue has transformed into its Christmas strip that gives delight to those stuck in traffic. But aside from diverting your attention, the lights in Ayala Avenue signals that Christmas has just arrived in the Makati CBD or Makati Central Business District. Keeping the Pinoy tradition and heritage alive, giant paroles, kapi shells, and stores adorn the stretch of Paseo.
You're still watching the big story here on One News. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas is set to raise its policy rate by 75 basis points to match the latest U.S. Fed hike. In a statement, BSP Governor Felipe Medalla says it is necessary to keep up with the United States Federal Reserve in order to temper price hikes and offset the weakening of the peso. He adds that the BSP remains vigilant in monitoring inflation and will take the needed action to reach its targets. The Monetary Board is expected to finalize the matter during their next meeting on November 17. If approved, the rate hike would bring the benchmark interest rate to 5%.
And that's the big story tonight. For more updates, follow News 5, the Philippine Star, and Business World online. You may also log on to onenews.ph for more in-depth analysis. I'm Jess Del Santos.
The big story is also available via Signal Play app. Make a free account now at signalplay.com and stream One News anytime, anywhere. I'm Gretchen Ho. Stay safe, Philippines.
And we are One News, all sides, all the time.